Greetings and namaste. This is Shiva, your friendly neighborhood wellness philosopher and guide, coming at you from Minneapolis, Minnesota. All right, let's get into today's topic. Today's topic is about the Pancha Mahabhut, or the 5 great elements as they're known in Ayurveda. Well, in Ayurveda, sometimes one might get a little confused about, so what are these 5 great elements, and do they really constitute all of creation? Well, first one must understand that Ayurveda is both a qualitative and quantitative science. It's qualitative in the sense that it helps us understand the world in terms of the most meaning to us, not necessarily its most physical form, but its most holistic meaning that addresses both our physical self, our emotional self, our intellectual self, and our spiritual self. So bear with me here as we go on this journey, and let's think about things from a new perspective. So what are the 5 great elements? They are space, or ākāśa, air, or vayu, fire, or agni, water, or apa, and prithvi, or earth. And going from space to earth, one can see one is going from a very broad, less tangible concept almost to a very physical thing you can touch and feel and smell. And we'll get more into that. In fact, Ayurveda and both yoga are both based on an ancient philosophy or way of seeing called Samkhya. Now, Sankhya philosophy is basically the science of enumeration. It kind of looks at things in terms of what constitutes them. And in terms of physical constituents, the 5 great elements, or the Pancha Mahabhut, are basically the starting point. Sankhya philosophy is, kind of goes a few levels above that even, but for today's discussion and kind of just recognizing how I find the discussion of the 5 great elements an accessible window into Ayurveda rather than going, top down, the classical way, might be a different spin on things, especially for those who've sort of been down the Sankhya path and maybe it didn't resonate as much. So let's think of the first great element, space, or ākāśa. What does that mean? What does that mean in your life? Think about it. I invite you to think about, what does space mean in your life? Well, if you look at the physical sense, one of the things that comes to my mind is the universe is spacious. It's so vast. I am like this little part of this vast cosmos, these unknown galaxies that are maybe countless in number. And science has proven that the universe is expanding. What does that mean? Space is getting bigger, maybe. But bigger into what? Maybe it's getting bigger into dark matter, which also science has validated is like 99% or well over 90% of what constitutes the universe as a whole. And we are simply still scratching the surface of what matter is, what we can actually see, whether it's through our naked eye or through the most powerful telescopes. So that's a physical sense of space. Let's look at another sense of space. Let's look at space in terms of relationships. What does that mean? When we say giving space to another person, that basically means we're giving them room to move. We're giving them room to grow. We're not constricting them from being a certain version. Now, that could be a relationship between partners, business partners, intimate partners, friends, or it could be a larger relationship of us in society. Now, if society doesn't give me the space to fully explore my potential, to experiment with my talents, and to figure out how I want to show up in this life, I'm going to feel constricted. In fact, a lot of my journey into this current career has been a result of that narrowing of space over time, where I was supposedly going up the career ladder in terms of, the income I was generating, the bottom line I was contributing for my organizations, and the successful signs I had on the outside in terms of the comforts of life. But in terms of my spiritual growth, in terms of my creative expression, I didn't have as much space as maybe I had when I was a student fresh out of engineering college. Maybe you have a similar story to tell. How much space do you have in your current profession? How much space do you have in your current relationships, right? Another thing in terms of space, which is really important in terms of Ayurveda and both yoga, is how do you create space for these ancient disciplines of wellness in your life? If we don't create space for something, where is it gonna grow? How is it gonna emerge? So it's really essential whenever we're starting something new to consider, do we have space for it in our lives? When I had to create space for yoga, I had to give up something. I had to give up my corporate career. I had to go back to school. Not saying everyone has to do that, but I chose that path by creating that space in my life, by living on less for pretty much months and years before I got to a space or place where I could flourish and emerge into my new self. And to be fair, I shouldn't have to compare to my old career or vacation, which served its purpose at the time, but no longer afforded me the space to grow in the way I saw myself growing. No longer gave me the space to explore my experiences and share those with the world in the way that I found most meaningful for this latter half of my life. So that's, think about space in those terms, and explore how the concept of space shows up in your life. We talk about, coming back to the physical space, space, when it's filled up, carries a certain energy with it. So when we talk about a cluttered room or cluttered mind or a heart that is so full of maybe certain emotional pain or trauma or circumstances that life is throwing at us or that we find ourselves in, there's not really space to get out of there, and one literally feels suffocated. So I kind of leave you with that thought on this first of the great 5 elements, the Pancha Mahabhut, and think about how do you want that space to show up in your life. Both yoga and Ayurveda offer us great opportunities to expand on that space. And I really find in my practice to find out where those opportunities for space are. And it doesn't have to be as radical as my path, where I sort of gave it all up pretty much. The universe pushed me in that direction, and I gladly embraced it after I figured out, that's where I need to go. But for practical purposes, try thinking about, and this is my invitation to you, what is that space in your day or your routine or your everyday hamster wheel, if you will, that you can create for yourself. Just create that space. It might be sitting in the garden, in the backyard like I am on a log of wood and seeing what comes from there. It might be sitting for 2 minutes of silence, of maybe meditation before tucking into bed at night. It might be waking up in the morning just 2 minutes earlier. Set that alarm for just 2 minutes earlier. I know sometimes it's hard to even wake up on time. You're like, ugh. But try and get to bed a little early one day and wake up 2 minutes earlier and give yourself that, space to explore what comes. And oh my gosh, if you don't start to see insights come in, even the smallest spark, you tell me, because I'm rooting for you and I'm sure something great will start to emerge. So on that note, this is Shiva signing off. We'll see you next time.